everybody to another episode of the Build Smart Blueprint. I'm really excited today to have Anna on the podcast. So Anna's an interesting character, an interesting entrepreneur for us because a few factors that I hope that we are going to cover today. So Anna has over 2 decades of experience in the construction and property development space. We love talking to entrepreneurs that have made that transition successfully from construction to property development because it's basically something everybody wants to do. But also, if you're watching the video, and you probably guessed from the name, Anna is a woman. Anna is from Romania, so she's also kind of had those challenges of coming from a different country, learning construction in a different industry, and obviously being operating in a very male-dominated environment. So lots of things that I hope that we're going to delve into today. Welcome to the podcast, Anna.
Thank you, GP. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. So, Anna, one of the things that you were kind enough to agree to come on this podcast and share is part of your journey around the ups and downs kind of thing. You were keen not just to share the positives, but some of the challenges. And one of the biggest challenges I think that our listeners would love to hear a little bit more about is your challenges through bankruptcy and kind of essentially being let down by one of your business partners. I don't want to spoil too much of the story as I want to hear it from your side, but I think it'd be useful if you could firstly give us a bit of a journey of like how you went from essentially being an interior designer to getting your foot into property, becoming a building contractor, and again coming back to property development. Can you give us like a little bit of a journey, like roll it back in time a bit?
Sure. That would be my pleasure. So actually, my career path was set in business management because that's what I did the university back in Romania. And then I came here to the UK in 2002. And I started a property development business with my business partner at the time. I also graduated from the Westminster College in London with degree in interior design, just to, be professional. And we have been working together about 4 or 5 years. And then all of a sudden, after we have accumulated profits and reinvesting and so on, as I mentioned to you, I had shock of my life at that time, 2006, when he ran away with all our profits. I almost went bankrupt. So it was quite a hit at that time. Well, it took me a while to recover, but the best thing were my friends there. They really helped me to, to come back and to regain trust. Of course, trust was gone at that time, obviously. And they reinvested with me, and actually that's when I have started thinking of having JV partners. But I was still not ready in 2006. I went back to Romania for a couple of years, and then I came back to the UK to start all over again. So it wasn't an easy period for me, but it taught me a lot of things.
So you came. I mean, you went back, and that first stint of being in property development, were you just the developer, or were you also like running the jobs and construction, or how did that work?
Okay, so I was looking for properties in auctions or in estate agents. So I was looking for run out properties or own properties, and I would purchase them. I would bring my teams from Romania, builders from Romania. We would refurbish them or do extensions or convert them into flats and then either sell them or rent them out. It depends on what the market was dictating. And so that's what I was doing at that time. My part of my role in the company was everything regarding properties and refurbishment and the work. And my business partner's part was the financial, all the mortgages, all the administration.
So, and obviously, please I don't want to pressure you to share too much or what have you. So feel free to share as much as you feel comfortable in sharing. But back in those times, so it sounds like it was like the kind of early 2000s, you had this kind of like no money down deals and the mortgage requirements were a lot looser, right? Was that, did that lend itself to some of the situation, how it played out in terms of, your business partner at the time being able to, take the money away and stuff like that? It's basically, was the time, that time of property development, did it lend itself to that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the lenders would lend money easily, but that wasn't the issue. My biggest problem, JP, was that I had trusted that person and I did not make any contract with him. So, and because I was, young and silly and trust people, and at that time I thought that a handshake is enough. And doing all that work together and really growing a big portfolio. I couldn't think of going that far. I never did. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we're now talking 20 years later. You have a construction company building contracts, but also, as you said, you're JVing, you're going back into this property development space. How do you recover from a setback like that and not let it scar and prevent you from growing? Because in some senses, like the handshakes and stuff go a long way, right? And sometimes you can go overboard with contracts, and you can lose trust when you want a contract with everybody about everything, and nobody wants to do business with you because they get suspicious why, that they think you're going to be a pain in the ass or a bit of a bitch to work with because you want contracts for everything. So what? Are you kind of still working through that, or have you found like a balance? Like, I'm interested how what you've learned over those 20 years of since that happened.
Well, I mean, for me, I understood that it needs to be simple. It needs to be simple and transparent. And with business partners, the more transparent, even though they may be things that they may not like at the beginning, but I prefer to tell them upfront so everybody knows what to expect, right? And of course, we do agreements because we need to have that. But as long as we know what everybody brings on the table, that if it's time or services, money, or what is it that everybody brings on the table, also a schedule really well done, and I like to have my schedules and everything prepared, but we have to be prepared for unpredictability, for things that contradict as well. And also, what is the exit plan? Yes, what is the exit plan? So as long as we have all this, written, it's called really, really have a good chat with all together and then sit at the table and for every single project what to expect, what is the time frame, what is the money that needs to be invested, the worst case, best case scenario, and then should be very easy and straightforward.
So I'd like to dig in a little bit more to this kind of idea of an exit plan, because I have had similar challenges with going into agreements without knowing the outcome, the without defining success, I think, essentially, and that created problems. And I've learned from that, and going forward in other partnerships I've done, that's one of the first things. Like, let's define success. Let's define what we both want out of it to make sure that, we're not going to get to a different position and one wants out and one wants to grow it. That's like the typical scenario, right?
Exactly. And
I,
also, JP,
go on.
sorry for interrupting you, but success is different for everyone, right? I mean, we have to agree with what success means to you. It may be different to me today, okay? Maybe for you it would mean to gain lots of uh, visitors, or maybe having your name. Maybe for me it's just gaining profits. I mean, success is really different for everyone. So
Yeah, and you actually highlighted another point there, which was almost that it's transitional, right? That it can change, and the nature of especially entrepreneurs is like you always want the next thing, you want to grow. So
exactly.
I think that's a valid also kind of point of this idea of, yes, maybe define success, define the exit plan, but make sure you then review it, to make sure that it's both the same. What I wanted to ask you originally there, Anna, was for those contractors and builders that are kind of venturing into property, they know that they want to go into that space, but they kind of don't know what they're doing, and they don't necessarily know what is a good outcome. Like, what would you say to them in terms of like working out, like how would they work out what they want, what would be a goal? Because a lot of people, I think, in building, they see this as an exit plan. They see this as a way to retire, to get off the tools, but they don't know the ins and outs of property. So it might be hard for someone that's more experienced to say, okay, what's your success plan? What's your exit plan? And for them, it might be like, oh, I don't know, I have got no idea. So have you got any advice to that? Like, how can you create a definition if you don't really have any experience to go off?
Um, I personally would think if going into property business would be a, a long-term goal, like you mentioned, of having a pension or having an income later in life because you've rented out those properties. Or to have an income now in 6 months, 1 year, to really build up your portfolio for rental life. So it's really where I feel at the moment and what are your plans for today, next 12 months, and the next 5 to 10 years as well. So yeah, it's really, again, it's depending on every single individual. Which stage are they? So they save money. I know many people save and they keep those money aside. So, I mean, if you look at those money every month, 10%, the
Yeah,
all the financial instability goes, well, if you had 100,000 pounds, at the beginning of the year, now it's worth, I don't know, 70 or 60,000. So be careful if you keep money aside. So you want to invest.
yeah, and I think something I kind of got there from what you said was, it's almost like if you feel overwhelmed by the idea of making an exit plan, well, just make a plan for 12 months. Like, define something for 12 months, and as you said, maybe 5 years, 10 years, but if everybody can almost, like, they should be able to see where they want to be in 12 months. Maybe they want to get their first property, they want to do their first deal, or they just want to find a
Exactly.
good JV partner, or they want to understand even how much finance they can raise, so they can work out what type of property they can actually get their teeth into and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I like to say that every trip starts with the first kilometers or the first mile. Yeah. So uh, even though you have the GPS set for, I don't know, 100 miles. Okay, let's start with the first mile, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then track.
I really still want to stay on this topic if it's okay. I'm digging this
Sure.
pain of yours,
Okay.
but I want to stay on this topic of kind of trust and just finding a good partnership. And I really want to extract more learnings from your past experience. So one of the things I think you know in our previous conversations we've talked about is this idea of you really valuing kind of people of the right mindset and the right kind of like mental connection with you. I think sometimes when you're going into a partnership, and I'm even looking at your situation when you were younger, you know, you've got somebody here that, you know, can deal with the finance, and maybe it's a side that you don't know. Sometimes you can put aside sort of warning signs, thinking, oh, this person's right because they can get me where I want to be. So my
Yeah.
question is, you know, looking back at your own experiences, good and bad, what kind of things can one look at when they're looking for like a JV partner or somebody that can help them in their kind of property journey, you know, in one way or another? That means like, oh, okay, this is a good sign of like potentially a good partner, or the other way, this is a red flag of like, okay, maybe you want to go slowly, or maybe you want to step away from somebody like
Right.
this. Have you got any insight there, Anna?
I personally would not go into partnership with somebody who would be very reputed, very evasive, very not reputed. Uh,
Do you mean
um,
like forthcoming, like not open about things?
not
Is that what you're trying to
open,
say?
but also is something. Oh, let's do this. Let's do this now. We'll talk later. We'll sort it out later. Let's just begin now. No. Let's say now and spend was now is most important time to, oh, but no, this is an opportunity. Now we should do. No, you need to make sure to be certain, trust your gut feel. Sometimes your gut feeling tells you should trust this person or you shouldn't trust this person, but then our mind tells us, well, go with it because you need it, or you need the money, you need somebody, partner up with. But you should trust your gut feeling. Instead, so if somebody rushes you, anything, of course, you should not also wait for too long, or I'm very busy, very busy, or so on. People like to pretend they're busy as well. I've met people like that. But I think I would, I mean, I, I like to go part- partnership with people who have the same values, have the same mindset as you mentioned, and have been entrepreneurs, and they know what it is like to be an entrepreneur. If not, then transparency is a very good value that I appreciate, and honesty, not lying. Right? I find lie somebody that just lost my trust again. Yes.
So I love to extract practical kind of steps because I think this is useful. I'm sure you, like me, have been to these kind of networking property events where it's just like
Wow.
hundreds of people with the same names and the same looking business cards, and like when you're in an environment like that, because that's what it can be like when you first want to get into property and you think, oh, let me just network. How do you practically extract somebody's values like from conversations like that? What do you do? Do you take them for dinner? Do you go for a coffee? Do you ask them questions there? Like, do you assess how they look? Like, what's your kind of like practical steps that you're taking there to work it out?
JP, I like the fact that you have asked me about my challenges, my, you know, times lost everything. That's one of the things that I like and I appreciate in people. Not only this how successful and clean. Because all of this and people would not admit that they have, failures as well. They're not honest. They're not open. So one of the very first questions that I ask when I meet them, have one-to-ones or meet them in the networking environments, what are their challenges? What are they? What should they fail? How did they fail? How did they come back from
Yeah.
that if they can, and so on? Because I think that's where the true story comes out, and you saw that, and
Yeah, I think there's value in that, because also where I like that question is the person is likely to give you an idea of like what skills they need to help them get a good partnership. So then you can also identify like, actually, I've got those skills, so actually maybe there is something further. Once you Okay, let's make this fictional situation. Okay, so you're going to a networking event. You're going as auditory, your construction company, wanting to get into property. You connect with, let's say, an investor or somebody that seems interesting. Values seem roughly aligned. How do you then go about like getting into business with someone like that? Like, do you suggest, as a building contractor, maybe just doing a contract for them, or do you do like one deal? Like, how do you do it? Because I imagine like you don't want to kind of go into full set up a limited company together, or a
from the
SPV
beginning,
or whatever it is, from the beginning. So what's the next steps that you usually suggest to get to that point?
I have my JV partners, actually, strangely enough, being my ex-clients in constructions, really, because they saw the way I work, the way I communicate, and the way we find and we do things, and so we gain trust there. And I also study them, because when you have a customer, when you have a client, there are clients and clients. There are clients that you love to work with. That means like, oh God, I hope we finalize and we finish and we start it, So, and both ways. And some of the clients that I worked for, they have been amazing and such straightforward, and I didn't have to tell twice the same thing, and vice versa. So I had a really good energy, synergy there, and that's how I go. Also, when I go into business networking events, I have never had a business straight after, a business networking event. What I can say is that I like to stay, to sit and wait and and look around and see and observe. I like to observe, see how do they behave, they're pushy, they pretend they are very happy, extremely happy, smiling again, and until their face fell over. I like to observe people, and then I will go and get in touch with those who are a bit quieter, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. I think in both areas, and especially like that side of actually working potentially with your clients, you really get to see somebody, the true somebody, when, stuff goes wrong on their project, and, you understand the communication and you can see how they react. Go and a lot of construction businesses, especially in the domestic sector, they have a very poor like repeat business, especially if they're doing extensions, lofts,
yes,
new builds. There's not like that much repeat business. So this is actually also a way that potentially your contracting company can generate future income by actually using it as a platform to find essentially JV partners, and then you can kind of then go forward. How I mean, obviously you came slightly differently because you already had a property background, but what does that conversation look like? When do you usually approach it? Are you like feeding it in during the build, or are you kind of at the end of the job you take them out for dinner. Like, what does that look like for you? I'd love to extract that from you.
Well, normally towards the end of the project, depending how big or small the project is, but towards the end of the project, if we had a good synergy, then I ask them what they do. Although, to be honest, I look up for my customers before I take my customers. I look up on LinkedIn, all the platforms to see who they are, if they're serious, especially if the projects are bigger. And then I start talking to them, knowing a little bit of their background. And I also mentioned that we do have a property development business, and we are looking for JV partners, and if they know anybody, or I'm willing to have a chat and get to know them. They're like, oh, I would be interested. I would be interested, and then that's how the conversation starts, and we meet up separately. Yeah.
And does your value proposition to those JV partners vary depending on who you're talking to? Like, is it for some you might be, okay, you can watch over my shoulder and learn and you get a return on your investment, or is it for some like, this is hands off, you put your money in, I can do much better than what you're getting in the bank or wherever you're keeping your money? Like, do you change it depending on what that person needs, or do you find actually it's better to have the same
I only
benefits
gave
for
them
each?
two opportunities for, like the way I work is either you are an active daily partner, which means you put money, time, and knowledge and network if you need the whatever, and then the percentage of the profit is different. Or you can be we call it passive partner, JV partner, which means you just invest money and keep them there for 12 months, maximum 12 months, and then you pay the interest every month. And
Right.
yeah.
But realistically, and here I'm honing maybe just on your kind of ex-client ones, but if they're like a layman, they don't have any experience in property, finance, construction, design, why do you want them as an active investor? Surely that's just like a pain for you. You'd rather they just kind of go
Exactly.
away and just give you the money,
Exactly.
no?
I would suggest that it's better, for them to just invest the money and then just back. Well, I had once a partner. He wanted for his wife to learn the process. So although for me it was more time consuming, because needing to explain everything, every single step, and then, but it was okay. It was okay. It was a good fun as well. So it works. It works. And so I only present two options. I don't give them a large
Yeah.
spectrum because it's more difficult for them to choose from.
And would you expect? So for me, like if I it was back in my contracting shoes, wanting to go back into like property, I think personally, I think that's such a good way. Like, is actually put some money in, so you've got some money to lose, but also do it with someone that can show you the ropes, right? So,
Exactly.
would I expect if I was in that situation, and you can talk for yourself, but you could also talk generally as kind of a property developer, would I expect to have to take a smaller return if I was going to try and kind of expect some sort of teaching and mentoring? Is that kind of common practice that rather than giving me 12%, you're going to give me 10%, but you're also going to teach me? Or can I expect to get the standard returns, but also like somebody to teach me?
It's as if you're paying for a training and a mentor and a coach in the same time. Because really, this is what it is, and the other person needs to spend more time to explain you and to show you. So you do get the training, but you do get also the environment where to experience it, which is amazing. I mean, it's more than an MBA, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, as I said, I think it's a great way, and I think especially those in construction have a tendency to learn by doing. They're just
Exactly.
those types of people. So, I
And you don't
want
need to
to.
cheat
Yeah.
yourself. You don't need to cheat yourself with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you can learn. Yeah, you can learn. You can learn from others' mistakes, essentially.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
I'd be keen to move this conversation to, Anna, is this kind of, let's say, current situation, current um, scenario for you is that you're running a main contractor with your husband, and you're also running property development. I Another thing on this podcast that I really like to do is talk about the negatives and the challenges. So can you give us some insight of what it's like, having your own development jobs on the go, but also your clients' jobs? Because there must be challenges there in terms of like who to serve, where to put resource.
Mm.
It's basically in some senses two businesses. They're a little bit related, but they are two separate businesses. So I think it's important to talk about those challenges so people know potentially what they're getting into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the two companies they complement each other anyway. But as you mentioned, I do work with my husband in such a business, and that's challenging now because we have two girls as well, and so we have a family, and we I think the biggest challenge is to define when we talk about business and when we have the family. That's one. Second, and I think the most important challenge is to know when to step back or when to step forward to increase the cost certain times. That's extremely important. I believe that's very important in any relationship if you just think about it. Wanting to be the boss all the time, you don't know when to step back. So it's the same. It's the same when you work with. Uh,
Yeah, from my own personal experience of having a construction company with my wife,
mm,
I think the first 2 years, we actually went without one of us being like the kind of CEO, the top level
yeah,
person.
yes,
And as soon as we made that difference of
clear.
like, it ended up being me, it was just like so much easier because there was just this single authority, and really there was maybe like over the kind of 6 years,
Yeah.
there was maybe a handful of times where it ever got to the point where like I had to make the executive decision of like
Yes.
one or two.
Also,
But just the idea of having like, okay, well, somebody's got to make the decision. It often just does help that situation.
but
um
also, not only the decisions. What I think, JP, is because the decisions you may take them together once you have a meeting and the chat with your chat, but in front of the customers or in front of the partners, in front of, who is there, who is going to take responsibility or take a decision, speak out, make a decision. Yeah.
and when it comes to your development sites and your client sites, is that ever a challenge where, let's say you've only got one groundworks team,
Right.
the client's extension, the foundations need to be dug, but also you need to get this one done. Like, how do you work out where the priority is? Are you always pushing your client's foot first, or is it like a balance? How does that work? And
Yeah.
is that a realistic challenge? Does that come up often?
Oh, yes, not often because, as I mentioned at the beginning, I like to schedule very well everything back. If I have in the same time my own property that needs to be done and also clients that have taken that have finished the project yet, I will focus on finishing client. Um, because I mean the property that I have, it's ours, and we can have that job done when we don't have jobs projects in the other company. That's how and why PROANA development has been born, because we didn't have a constant project. And then I needed to give to the guys work, because otherwise just pay them. And I said it's good to have our own properties to do that.
Yeah, I've actually had a few conversations with a few individuals like yourself in both spaces, and they often do complement each other. Like when one, when the market goes one way versus another. Like I think at the moment the feel I get is that, especially in London, the deals are not stacking up that well. That actually it's a good time to have a contracting business to be able to keep the guys, retain your good teams, so they don't go elsewhere. So when you could do good deals do come through, you're like, you've got the speed to be able to transact. Another subject, Anna, that I really wanted to make sure that I talked to you about today, if we could move it on, is your experiences both as a woman in the industry, but also your experiences of coming to this country. And I think you came to, sounds like this, even the second time you came back to the UK, Romania was not in the EU, right? So so there's a little bit more challenges with coming here, and even perceptions of how people see you and all of that. And the reason I think it's important is, yes, even the majority of our listenership are men. I think a lot of the learnings can still be applied to any transition you're making when you're, let's say, a builder and you don't know anything about property development. You're kind of out of your depth, or you're kind of judged in a certain way. So can you talk a little bit about like what that was like, what kind of challenges you faced, and you can separate the two, if you think that they're kind of different, but I'd love to kind of get some insight there, and what lessons you would have to somebody, going through something similar at the moment where they feel like they're kind of the minority.
Well, I believe there are challenges in any industry, but in construction industry, and being the woman, as you mentioned, there have been a couple of challenges. Coming from abroad, working here again, it's a top-up. And one of the challenges I found was that some people would expect our services to be cheaper, therefore to pay less. And let me tell, I will tell you afterwards how I overcome this challenge. So that's one of the challenges. Then I find sometimes that my team was treated unfairly. The guys have been treated unfairly. Again, explain how I overcome this one. And also excuses, not to pay, especially the last payment. All kind of faulty things that they may, sometimes may try to find, or may try to that we have been lost in translations, a couple of things, and we misunderstood, and that has been lost in translation. So I think these are the main issues. And the fourth one, to come with a woman in this industry, is that I don't know as much as a man knows in this industry, and therefore I may be, pay less, or maybe treated differently, or maybe I'm because I'm a woman, I may not know everything, but
so let's how, before we get into the first three that you mentioned, how did you overcome, and maybe you haven't, but how have you approached this idea of like, and maybe it was true that as a woman you didn't know, maybe you didn't come off the tools. So what did you do to still be able to get business, to win trust as a woman in the industry? And this is both with your clients, investors, and with your teams as well, right? The guys on site.
JP, I don't pretend I know it. I never said that. However, what I admit, and what I do is, if I don't know the answer to this challenge, or why this challenge has arisen, I will I know where to go and ask and find out answers. You know? I will ask the guys how we can sort it out, or I will going. I have a very good network within this industry, and I will always find answers. So I do not determine. I know I would definitely know where to go to find the right answer to come back. And that's for the guys as well, because sometimes it's something new. I like to go all the time to all the exhibitions to see new materials, new products that are coming out. And sometimes I come with crazy ideas to the guys. Oh, I would like to do this, you know. And they're like, oh, is it? So then I come with a manual of how to use it, how to implement it, how to fit it. Or so it's a constant communication and information and upgrade each other, update also each other, you know. So I don't pretend that I know everything. When I don't know something, say I don't know. If I make a mistake, then I say I'm sorry, I did that, and I will take responsibility. So sort it out and see how I can sort it out. I expect the same from my customers. You see, that's the mistake. The customers will never do that, or very, very few will appreciate it. Yeah.
So it sounds like, you know, the key takeaways I took from that is one being just embracing that, you know, you don't know everything, and actually that lowers not necessarily expectations, but it seems to kind of make people more open. But also, I think another key thing you mentioned is about the network, right? Just creating that network that you can rely on, or even if that's trade shows and stuff, like just getting out there to learn more and actively just being in that environment. Because
Exactly.
even I think sometimes it goes a long way if you can just understand the terminology, if you can like talk in the same way and stuff like that, because it makes people again lower their boundaries and actually want to help you. So let's get into the kind of other side of it. So you talked a little bit about, you know, lost in translation, people withholding payments, you know, maybe being treated unfairly. And I think a really big one that I'd love to hear about is this idea of, oh, you're a Romanian builder, so, you know, I expect your price to be a lot cheaper. Tell us, how have you gone about that? Because I've heard that several times.
Several times. Well, first, when I met with my prospects, because they are not my customers yet, they're prospects, right? When I'm meeting with them and I give them an estimate, I also tell them that my teams are very skilled, are respectful and professional. Many of my guys have university degrees or colleges, so I mean they treat it respectfully, not as slaves or others. So I keep upfront with my prospects, with future customers, to know and get the feeling of our team. We are for values, and those are, as I said, honesty, transparency, and also we like to be efficient. We don't like to waste our or anybody else's time. Okay, so we are like, yeah, we are very efficient, because that's how we are making money. Being efficient, not wasting time, and having tons of tea breaks or lunches or beers or whatever other people do. So that's uh, I think one, and that when my guys are coming, the customers, they know, you know, to treat them right and not be disrespectful towards them, you know. And that's something that I work really hard to maintain to there. And also, I tell my customers that I'm their one point of contact, this only point of contact for them, you know, to speak to. They are not allowed, but I strongly advise to speak to me everything they need. If they want something extra, if something they fear it doesn't come the way they thought it would, or whatever, they will speak to me, because simply because I don't want to have lost in translations challenges anymore, right? Because they would say, oh, but actually, that guy, I don't know his name. Well, I told this guy to do this. No, you don't talk to me. You speak to me. Okay. So that's how I kind of cut all these misunderstandings or lost in translations challenges. And I gained respect for my guys as well. Because, I mean, of course, you don't know who is coming into your house. You have to be a house. If I tell them from the beginning, they are respectful, very skilled and professional, and they are well brought up and they've been to school, not like no school, then they would be treated accordingly.
So I want to ask you, because you mentioned there that I think you said two or a couple of kind of core values in your business that you essentially communicate to your prospects.
Yeah.
From a practical level, what does that look like? What are you doing? Are you sitting them down? Are you showing them on the paper? Have you got it written on your quote? Like, how do you actually communicate that with them? Or is it more of a subtle, like just in
Verbal.
conversation?
Yeah, no, verbal. Whenever I feel that I can fill in with when I tell them about my team and why are we different, because I mentioned that we are different from a lot of other builders because of my team are the way they are and because of our values and because we also work, doesn't matter how big or small the project is, we work on weekly installments which are direct proportional with the work that should be done. Therefore, it's win-win. It's fair for both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel in. Yeah.
No, I think that's I've never really heard of that kind of approach of really giving the client like these kind of core values in that way. Actually really defining them. I'm curious. Based on my challenges, personal challenges, it's all well and good you as the owner who's got massive reason to want these values to be embedded in your business to be front and center.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then get your guys to buy into that? Because I know when we've spoken before, when you were building your company up, you spent a lot of time trying to find the right guides. And I think you've got a lot of retention with the guys in terms of like the same team.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine they've got buy-in because they really believe in the messaging and the way you want the clients to be treated. So how do you actually practically implement that into your guys as well?
Well, I say that in my guys as well. I tell them that they will be respected by the customers and they'll be respected by me, us, by management as well. And they can see they are. We never delay the payments, never. Always pay possible 1 day earlier. Also, like surprises and make nice Christmas, Easter gifts, and things like that. And they saw the difference. They saw the difference because when they go and work for somebody else, they either grab all the money with payments or they are treated by customers to different. They never wise because I do my best to create that environment. And JK, I don't take planets, but they do not comply with if I call them up phone, some of them they will feel not okay. And they will say nicely that they don't want to work with us because they find somebody cheaper. That's fine. That's fine. You can't lose something that you never had. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, I love that because I think on the surface, because I hear it often, I really do, like, the client just wants us to be cheap and
exactly.
I can't get higher. But what you've said there is like, well, before dismissing that, give them the reasons why you shouldn't look at us as the cheapest, and then make the decision if they're not going to be an ideal client, rather than like just assuming if you've just given the quote and you've sent it on an email, you've never talked to them again since you saw them at the first time. And when you saw them, you were on your phone and, you turned up with dirty trousers and all of that, then it's kind of like, well, did you try to convince them otherwise?
Yeah.
Are you presenting the image that you are the cheapest, or are you presenting the image that you are like, an actual company to be taken seriously?
I also mentioned we are not the cheapest. So I don't know what you are looking for and what are the priorities in your project. But if you are looking the cheapest estimate, well, I will send you the estimate, but we are not the cheapest. Okay?
Yeah.
Our values are this and this and this, and so I kind of make them expect that. I set their expectations right and there. So we don't waste time, Jake, afterwards. That's basically. That's why from 100 viewings that I have, I get about 10%. So 10 projects are like that. So because of that.
Yeah. So I think we could talk for a long time, because I think there's a lot of subjects that we have mutual interest in. I want to bring this conversation back around to property development, because I know PROANA is your kind of key focus, really, and one of the reasons that we're talking today and sharing is because as you've mentioned a few times, you are actively looking for JV partners. I think you've previously told me that you're really happy to kind of connect with other builders that are kind of looking to get into that space, whether that's knowledge, whether that's JV and stuff like that. But can you give us very quick outline, Anna, of kind of how PROANA works, and how others that are in, have resonated with what you've said, can reach out to you and maybe connect and have a chat with you?
I'm always on the lookout for joint venture, as I mentioned to you. But I only want to connect with just, who are serious, committed, and looking to lead to long-term investments or projects as well. How PROANA does it work? And I'm always looking for opportunities. And when I find a good opportunity, I also already have somebody in mind that I can JV with, limited company together, and I have all the business plan for that property. We know exactly how much time will take, how much money will cost us, the property, the refurbishments, or whatever we do. And we know what we do with it, and then as well. So, it's I always have in the pool, properties. Some in this because I didn't find a business partner soon enough to get that, but that's fine. Some are, we can purchase them and like 50 partnership and move on. So I'm always looking for big, serious, and trustworthy, like-minded JV partner.
And is LinkedIn the best way that people can reach out to you? Yeah, perfect. We'll drop your LinkedIn and the PROANA website on the show notes. But thank you again, Anna, for being so open with your experiences. I think a lot of people, that listened carefully to today's episode would be able to get a lot of extract information and a blueprint, which is what this podcast is all about. It's about kind of learning from others and kind of working out the steps to success. So thanks for your time.